and welcome back to the dynamic duo of Dr. Bill and Tim. We're going to be kind of bringing the news to you, and with a little bit of humor, tongue-in-cheek, but also positive, because our God is God. No matter how bad the news gets, we need to realize the King is on the throne. He's not nervous. And as we pray and we deal with each of these issues, we become overcomers. And some of the insanity of this is brought to light by some of the news blogs, and you have a good one you just mentioned before the break. Tim, tell us this.
Well, yeah,
news blogs,
there's a story I link,
storm.
and it's from Video Rebel blog, and that guy does really good work. He writes articles, which I used to do and occasionally still do, but I prefer to link stories and make comments on them. But anyway, he has the story, The Perfect Storm, Amnesty, Hyperinflation, Food Rights, and Race Wars. And as we talked earlier today, this is, I think, the biggest story right now. It's a story that the mainstream media is not giving anywhere near full or appropriate coverage to, and that is the absolute opening of the borders to a sudden flood of immigrants from Mexico, Guatemala, and Central America that is inclusive of very large numbers of gang members. And we're being told, toddlers are coming across. I have a problem envisioning how a toddler, somebody maybe 3 years old, can cross the American border by themselves. And we're being told they're coming across without their parents. But what I do know is happening is there are many 15, 16, and 17-year-old gang members. And these gang members are incredibly vicious. These are the characters. They tattoo their face, their arms, and all. One of my best friends lived in Central America during many of the civil wars that went on, married a beautiful gal in Guatemala. Her first husband was disappeared in the Civil War, and he adopted her 2 kids, and they've had another child. And a few years ago, they went back to Guatemala for a visit her family, and they were absolutely shocked. All these people that had been fighting in the civil wars down there, well, they don't have jobs. They're trained and they know how to kill. So they've started gangs. And they went to a McDonald's. Now, typical Mickey D, they all kind of look the same around the world, except in Guatemala, they have private guards out in front with AK-47s.
Wow.
And, and one doesn't normally think of somebody having to guard your Mickey D's with an AK-47. That's how bad it is down there. Well, Mexico was arresting illegal immigrants trying to cross Mexico to go into the United States. Now they have dropped that program because the Obama administration was paying for a lot of it, and they cut those funds off. And they are riding in masses on the top of and inside railroad cars by the thousands. We have had a number of U.S. Border Patrol officers resign in absolute disgust because they're arresting these characters covered in tattoos. They know how incredibly vicious these young gangsters are. And instead of kicking their butts out of this country or throwing them in prison, we are putting them on chartered flights and flying them all over the United States where they're being housed, fed, given food, and all. We're dispersing them around the country.
That's insanity. And of course, this is Obama.
Well, it's not, but see, it's not insanity. That's what's so bad about it. It was just insane. You could say, well, let's impeach the bastards that are doing this and put them in an insane asylum. But no. There's a strategy. You have to ask yourself, why? For God's sakes, why would anybody do something like this? Well, we have to go back to the broader picture. The U.S. dollar is about to go belly up. Now, we've spent maybe, it's hard to say precisely, but $8 trillion of free things from overseas in the last few years just by having Greenspan and Bernanke and now Yellen print more dollars. Because the American dollar, petrodollar, has been worth more than gold. Gold costs money to keep it, and it takes, there's a lot of weight and all. But dollars are wonderful, and you have them on your computer and everything. You move $1 billion here and $1 billion there. Well, of course, because now we're printing, the printing presses are working overtime, so to speak. Actually, they just created on a digital record. But it's impoverishing men and women all over the world because the dollars they receive are daily becoming less and less. Dollars are used in international trade. You don't, for the last, decades, if you're in, say, Poland, well, let's say you're in Belgium, and you want to buy something from Colombia or Venezuela or Canada, you pay in U.S. dollars. And vice versa, if they buy something from you, they pay in U.S. dollars. It facilitates trade, but it also means that the people that own the Federal Reserve, that's not us. That's
right.
the mainly European Yiddish bankers, central bankers, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Rockefellers, and so forth. They make money, and of course we have wars constantly because wars were the biggest deficit spending and worthless government welfare programs that actually make matters worse. So when we go into debt, which we're in debt, unbelievable amount of money, if we need another $1 trillion, well, under the Constitution, only the United States government itself has the right to print money. But that would be for free. Instead, we go to these banksters and we say, "Oh, Mr. Bankster, could you give us another $1 trillion, please?" And they say, "Oh, of course. You now owe us." And they make a bookkeeping entry and poof, $1 trillion appears from nowhere.
Wow.
And they loan it to us. And then we have to pay that $1 trillion back plus compound interest. And guess what? They're getting insanely rich. Okay? Now, because eventually a system like that has to collapse, and it is right now, as we speak, it's collapsing more and more every week. That means when we go to Wally World and buy stuff made in Taiwan and Mexico and China and all these third world countries, very quickly, the dollar will be devalued 20-30% to lose probably 80%.
Tim, if we get a hiccup, they get a cardiac arrest. So that includes China, which is already hanging by their fingernail, or Chinese long fingernails.
But you have a World War III to take care of that problem. And
exactly. That's my point. Is that this is basically all distraction, including the war, from the fact that the globalists can't manage the economy anymore. They have screwed it up so bad that they can't unscrew it up. And they can't even make a profit anymore, even if they extracted every dollar and every bit of savings.
Well, they're still extracting. That's what austerity fascism is all about. Look, they're demonically possessed.
Right.
The normal rules of intelligence and reason and logic and human thought and human behavior don't apply to these characters, these 30 families and their minions. There's probably, some people said that if you, all 30 families, some say 8 families, but all 30 families and the top people working for them, it's under 10,000 people. These people don't live in our world, and they are demonically possessed, in effect, because to do the stuff they're doing, you can't be a rational thinking human being. It's way, way too far beyond the pale. Well, all these Mexicans and Central American gang members that we, the U.S. government, not us, the citizens, but the U.S. government and the Department of Homeland Security are now giving bus tickets and airplane tickets and opening the gates. The Border Patrol has stood down, and the local cops are trying to stop them. Now they're going to come in, and here's the thing, like the Zetas, Z-T-A-S.
Las Zetas, yeah.
Yeah. More
when we come back, we'll do a little more. Yeah. Tim, one of the things is
if you're going...
By the way, we have our full map up, Pacific Coast Radiation Station map, and we are now active with a gamma detector specially set up with David Crane, our engineer. I got my computer techie guys, and it is now operational. Took quite a lot of tweaking and so on, but it's operational.
How do we get to that?
Well, if you go directly right now, I'm going to be posted up on our Nutrimedical. Right now, you go over and rent, and you'll find it, but you'll see the same maps. Those links will be up right after the show. And what happens is you'll get the full Pacific Coast map, or if you want to go to the Portland Station, the Ashland, Oregon, Pacifica, California, or Vista Station, you'll be able to pick it up. We'll soon also have one in Colorado. These are gamma stations. They're specifically set up not to pick up beta emission like strontium. They're to pick up cesium-137, which is our marker isotope. And it's interesting, too, when I had my techie guy from Data Doctors over to help me, he worked on the in Ronald Reagan, I think until 2009, and of course he said it was the oldest new carrier that was put out in 2004 because it had older technology from the 80s, so they had to strip everything and put new technology in right afterwards. What happened is that carrier was one of the most expensive ever built, $2 billion plus, with all the refurbishing on top of that, and it's now a radioactive piece of junk. And he said, well, I'm not worried. I said, really? I said, well, all the people that were in the Ronald Reagan, they're now exposed to radiation. Many of them are dying. And he looked at me like all scared. And I said, it's the real problem. We need to know. We don't have data. Right now, it's actually been pretty stable, roughly around 36 counts per minute, but you can actually see the live data. Every 10 minutes we push data forward, so you can see the counts per minute, you can see the graph.
So now, are you doing this?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Out of your pocket?
Yes. And
well, you're to be commended then. I mean, this is something the U.S. government should damn well have done,
Craig,
2 years ago?
I asked the government to do it. I talked to the assistant for Senator Feinstein.
But Bill, here's something you didn't do. You didn't make a six-figure contribution to a few congressmen and senators.
Right. Well, I didn't get any response from the so-called nuclear expert. Was a knucklehead under Dianne Feinstein, tried to pretend himself to being some kind of nuclear expert. And then I asked questions and realized he was basically a know-nothing pencil pusher. And then I talked to the assistants for the the senator from Oregon. I had Senator Feinstein, and when I asked them the same questions, I get nowhere. And I've also been trying to do, by the way, radiation testing on various isotopes. Even my alma mater won't test them. I test labs as far away as Britain, Germany, and Japan, and I'm going to try retying labs here that can actually test water, radioisotopes using plasma neutron spectroscopy or gamma detection techniques.
But this government spends trillions of dollars a year, and we can't do...
Well, we had to do it ourselves. We did it ourselves. David Crane put a bunch of money in it. I put my own money in it to get it done, and we put it up. Okay, so it's operational.
Well, God bless you.
Yeah, and we put our station up. The other people in Pacifica, David Crane has his station, Ashland, Oregon. That's the station for Jeff Rentz. And we have Portland, Oregon, which is further north. So those stations are all operational. If you see a surge, they're all the same kinds of devices and the same standard software. It's real. We don't know. I mean, all we're going to say is we're being skeptical. If you see a doubling of the counts, it means it's gamma. It'll go right through the Mueller counter tube, and it indicates an increase in gamma radiation, and it's only going to come basically from high-energy gamma sources like cesium-137. So if you see a surge, look out, because it means we're getting a big blast of cesium, and so far, it's been pretty stable. We're going to see in a month or two if we see the trend curve, and if it surges, we're in trouble. It means a big accident happened probably within the previous 2 or 3 days in Japan. It tends to be that the jet stream carries most of that radiation north, which is the junction between British Columbia and northern Washington State. Then it dips down along the Rocky Mountains and heads up toward the Midwest after it dips as low as Indiana.
Well,
I think it actually goes over your house.
Just is you're taking matters into your own hands.
Well, we have to, because we can't
exactly.
The government are completely useless, and they're liars, and again, we're not inventing data, we're pushing data that is generated live. So when you look at that live data, you're going to see it right there.
It's not spun, it's the truth.
Right, and these are expensive detectors. We have a USB Inspector Plus. These are expensive detectors. We have inspective wiring and connections, so it runs 24/7 on dedicated lines and dedicated computers, and it's live data.
Okay, can I get back to the Central American thing?
Let's get back to that, because
we're going to have to take matters in their own hands, I'm afraid, in this country soon.
Well, I think the Texans are wills. First off, I know they have a corrupt government in Texas, but I mean the corruption only goes so far. I think Governor Perry's going to put his foot down this summer. I think
Governor Perry, besides the Texas Air and Army Guard, Texas is one of about half the states in the Union have a state defense force. In Texas, they're called the Texas State Guard. It's the largest in the country, and he can call up the National Guard, and the president can federalize it, but the president can't federalize the Texas State Guard. And he can call up, and of course he can double, triple, quadruple it overnight and swear people in. And they have full police authority if necessary. They are a military unit, so they can carry heavy weapons. And I have a paragraph here I've linked on my site, Europe. The Zetas, that's the, how do you pronounce it, La Zeta?
Los Zetas.
Los Zetas, okay.
Los Zetas.
This is the Mexican gang, are capable of devising and executing plans. By the way, this comes from Video Rebel blog. This is a story I've linked.
Right.
When the riots start, any unskilled, unemployed person can commit a burglary with immunity. But a gang leader who was trained by U.S. Special Forces could come up with a better plan. Make a list of all the banks in town worth robbing and add to that the gun shops. Amidst the riots, set off a few bombs at high-value targets that draw police attention, organize snipers, send in teams to simultaneously rob the 30 banks and the 5 gun shops. If there is a police response, have the snipers start firing at the cars before they get as close as 100 yards. Use EMP weapons to take down the drones and helicopters. The robberies will be over in minutes. The gangs will have all the money and guns in town, and the news media will start reporting that these systematic citywide takedowns are occurring all over America. Now, that's the kind of danger we're going to face. I think Americans will win. You see, our founding fathers were very, very smart people, and they fought the English, which are pretty damn tough. And they were determined that we, the American public, would be able to bear arms. Right. And to protect ourselves against the government and against whatever comes down the pipe.
And every time the government's tried to seize guns, like you hear more stupid statements from Joe Biden or Obama, they should be gun salesmen. I'm telling you, if they got a commission, they'd be set for life. Because these guys, every time they make stupid moves to try to see if they can seize guns, including Dianne Feinstein, who now on both sides of the issue, she has a private army protecting her, and she carries her own concealed weapons, yet she doesn't want anybody else to have them.
Well, of course, she's special.
She's a nutcase. She's a nutcase, okay? These people think there's one rule for them and one rule for any other American. There isn't.
Folks, you need to stock up on guns and arms and ammunition and food.
Yeah.
Nutrimedicals, water, stuff like that, because I think bad things are coming.
Absolutely. Get your Nutrimeds, get yourself well, get yourself fit, get off the toxic polypharmacy. Back in a moment. I don't understand the reverse speech of Russia. Welcome back. I just want to make a comment about one of the articles here. You talk about Putin removes the threat of military intervention after ceasefire. I've watched Putin. He's a master at the chess game of international geopolitics, as well as Mr. Lavrov, who's towers intellectually over John Kerry. What we have here is Russia's not going to remove military intervention. In fact, they decide to go to war games, etc. They're basically move back or pull back just temporarily to say, hey, we want to see action. We want real negotiations with these people. We want a ceasefire. And don't go in and tell us that you're going to do a ceasefire without talking about something that's a permanent peace and actually talking to these people. So Russia, I think, is actually guaranteeing that they're going to soon go and clobber Kiev. And the idea that the Kiev people put on a temporary ceasefire means they know the Russians are going to crush them like a bug, and it's going to happen quick.
A few hours ago, Dr. Bill, we the Russians call them the self-defense militia in eastern Ukraine shot down with a ground-air missile a Ukrainian junta army transport helicopter. Now, This helicopter was taking off from a hilltop site outside of the city of, let me find the city that they've been fighting in for the last several days.
Slavyansk.
Okay, exactly. Yeah. Now, all day, the junta forces have been using artillery to bombard the city all day long. Okay, so towards the end of the day, a helicopter takes off, and it's a transport helicopter. It probably flew in artillery shells, and there were 9 people on it, so it was probably flying some people out, might be wounded or whatever. Right. Well, it was shot down. Now, on that basis, Porky, as they call him, and Jeff Reams was, I think, the one that started that.
Poroshenko.
The president of the junta in the Ukraine.
And then it's stupid to call him the Chocolate King. They should be called the Prostitution and the Drug Warlord King.
Exactly, but chocolate sounds so much better, you know.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, he has said, well, he may stop the ceasefire now because they violated it. His forces have been shelling a city full of civilians all day,
which is a war crime by itself. I mean, the international community in the United Nations should already be saying, hey, Mr. Man Poroshenko, Porky, you've already committed war crimes by shelling schools, churches, and civilian areas. This is a war crime, and I think Russia is going to wait till there's enough body count to say, hey, we're going to swoop in. Now we have the moral high ground. We're going to crush you guys.
Well, it may be, but everything is connected now. Everything is connected to this geopolitical battle at the very highest level. It's financial, it's economic. You know, it's dollar-based.
Well, Russia is pulling the plug on the dollar. I mean, they've made deals now with all the nations around.
Well, so China just sent their number 2 boy into London, and they made a deal with the British to trade in Chinese yuan.
Well, how can we have an ally with Britain
American dollars? And they said, we're going to spend $100 trillion, and we want to buy technology from you and, sell you some products, but it will be to your benefit. And it was a sweetheart deal, and they just announced it within the last, roughly 24 hours.
Now, how can Obama and America think this is good when our so-called ally Britain, that's basically wagging the dog of America?
Obama doesn't think he plays basketball.
Right, and the thing is, he does high kicks when he gets a good shot in golf. The fact is,
he's a jerk.
If Britain does this, it's stabbing us right in the back and saying, you know what, America, go to hell. We don't care about your dollar. We were making deals with the Chinese because we're moving on to the next thing.
Well, the world is, and that's why we suddenly have opened the doors to all these gang members from Central America. You know, some of these gangs hunt cops and hunt cop families. But I'll tell you, they're going to come in, and they're not established, and they're going to be in the middle of a shooting gallery. Those the cops don't get, the rest of us will get.
Okay, let me tell you. This is a message for you down in Mexico, Guatemala, San Salvador, and elsewhere. You come to our backyard, and we're going to kill you quicker than spit and skin you alive. You think it's going to be easy taking over America? This is the most vile nation on earth if you want to attack us right in our backyard. Everybody, including the Emperor Hirohito in Japan, knew there would be America behind every grade of glass. And since this Obama administration has been running for 2 terms now, he has been the best gun salesman in human history. Yeah. Americans now have a civil defense force. We didn't have one back at Oklahoma City
and these clowns, the globalists, the Zionists, that want to take our guns away, and they did the Sandy Hook false flag. It really wasn't an event; it was a non-event.
It didn't even happen, actually.
Event.
And then they passed a small arms treaty that Obama wants to just pass without even having congressional.
Well, it's not going to work. You can't take our guns away. We'll fight. We'll give you. We'll give you our guns, one bullet at a time.
Right, and not only that,
and just have guns. A friend of mine knew the sheriff. He was a friend of mine, and he was a deputy. And the old sheriff we used to have, he was, he wanted to take the guns away. He said, "If I get the order," and the guy says, "Good, you go in first because I'm not going in. You want to take people's guns away, you go in."
All the sheriffs in Colorado do the same thing.
I'll be the next sheriff after they carry your corpse out.
Tim, the sheriffs in Colorado wouldn't enforce the state law, and they ended up with some state congressmen that was basically state senators that basically got removed from power, including one of the senior idiots trying to push the gun laws.
When they did the Sandy Hook false flag, these idiots spent 2 or 3 years setting it up. They spent a lot of money, but they're so diluted and so unconnected with the American population. They thought this fake incident where they said all these kindergartners were killed a week and a half before Christmas, everybody was going to support the denuding of guns from America. Just the opposite happened. They stripped the shelves. I remember going in, and I couldn't even find shotgun shells. I mean, everything
was... You couldn't find 22 caliber
people
shells.
Bought everything they could.
Now, Tim, let me back up a bit here. Now, I posted on our site, people can make unconventional weapons. They can take tubes and have little propane-style accelerators for ball bearings. They can use linear accelerator tubes and take welder's flux. They can use sound cannons that they can build themselves that are just as powerful as the outright.
Air.
All kinds of stuff. There's ways of knocking out little. You know what the so-called terrorists in the eastern areas of Russia, use microwaves, and what they do is take the front off, saw the front off the microwaves, put 5 or 6 aim up on a ballast thing to kind of balance it, and pointed at Russian jets and helicopters flying overhead, and knocked their guidance systems out. And these are tube-based jets and helicopters, so they knocked them right out of the air, including missiles. The fact is, if they think that they can take us on, bring it on, because you guys are idiots. And I don't care if you pour in foreign troops or gang members or whatever, we'll eat them alive. And if they don't join us, they're going to die quick. Because we won't put up with it. We know that
I want to change, before we run out of time, there's a very important story that I've linked. It comes from Press TV, which is an Iranian site. It's very popular. It's actually, they try real hard to be credible, although they do give you an Iranian slant, and I'm no pro-Iranian, but they do try very hard to be credible. The article says, and it's not even the headline, terrorism is a modern way of U.S. warfare, but when you read it, it says that the ISIS have nuclear weapons. In other words, some of these, and this comes from, I believe it's from Veterans Affairs article.
I don't believe that at all. I
agree. I agree with you.
Listen, let me lay out the nations that have battlefield nuclear weapons. Israel has them. America has them. Russia has them.
Britain, France, China, and Japan.
Right, Britain, France, China. And by the way, the third biggest nuclear power in terms of throw-weight nuclear weapons is Japan. If China squeaks sideways, Japan will flatten them so flat they don't know, they'll never get up again. And the Chinese want a saber rattle. They're stupid. The Japanese have been getting ready for 75 years. And believe me, if the Chinese try to do anything they can imagine, their own land, and everything will be fine. Just stay on your side of the fence. Set up an international force to enforce it, and that's the end of it. Welcome back, and so that's the situation. The fact is, all these fancy weapons went off to Syria. The fact is, we're going to get some real big surprises. We're not only going to have the S-300 anti-aircraft system, the Alexander, the Akant hypersonic cruise missile, the supercavitation torpedo, the S-300 anti-aircraft system, which Russia's given over to Syria, but the Gerald Bull super cannon, all kinds of advanced Scud missiles, which were transferred over, all the jets, by the way, that were transferred over as well. And now,
just today, Iran has transferred 88 various models of Sukhoi fighters to Iraq.
Right. And that, by the way, wouldn't happen without Russians' blessing, because it's not the jets that count, it's the parts and the support.
The supply line, logistical chain is the ball and chain of modern warfare.
Mother Russia's making good jets. And by the way, they also contract to make them in China. Russian jets, the new MiG-29I upgraded model is far superior to the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. It won't fall out of the sky.
Oh, hell, the old MiG-21 from the Vietnam War era will outfight the F-35. The F-35 costs right now $200 million a copy, but probably because a lot of countries are backing out, and the numbers built will be a lot less. They think it could cost as much as $350 a copy, and
the reason
it
for it is
outfight a 1950 design MiG-21.
The reason is the way it's built. It's built with pork, which means they have to build Part A in one state, Part B in another state, so everybody gets a piece of pork. And the senators and congressmen from those states...
I'll give you a good example of that.
Kickbacks.
Okay. My district always has its congressman on the House Armed Services Committee. In fact, a few years ago, well, he's dead now, but one used to be a no-drinking buddy of mine from college. Right. And we have the largest inland naval facility, Cray Naval Yard, in the United States, and they make all kind of missiles and artillery shells and so forth there. And it's one of the biggest employers in the state. Okay, so our congressman here always is on the House Armed Services Committee. Now, when they were building the F-22, we built a little tiny part. It cost a fortune to build that little part, but you see, our congressman was on the House Armed Services Committee. So everybody that was on the House Armed Services Committee got to build a part. And all the senators got to build a part in each state. So, they could both claim, well, I helped to get a factory in. Now, the factory was a joke. The security and the overhead was a lot more than a handful of people building a little tiny part. But when you build a plane like that, it costs, instead of $5 million a copy, it costs $200 million a copy. It's pork. It's corruption. But the unbelievable thing is, it's a lousy airplane. You think for $200 million, at least they can build a decent plane. No, it's a joke.
Well, the old story, they said, when God took a day off and they built the elephant, and he gave it to a bunch of his angels who all decided to build it by committee.
Actually, the elephant's kind of a neat animal. They're fairly smart,
Oh, yeah, they're smart. I'm just kidding, but what I'm saying is it's like that. It's like that. That's what we.
I think the storyline originally meant he was going to build a horse, and he gave it to his angels, and they formed a committee, and the elephant was a horse designed by a committee.
Oh my! But anyway, so the situation here, we only have a couple minutes left. Let's summarize what we have right now. And we have to use the Bible as our standard.
I wrote an article a couple years ago, The Perfect Storm from Hell, and The Perfect Cornucopia from Hell. And that's what we're in more and more. We're in an upside-down world. Nothing makes sense. We have of all the developed countries on Earth, we have the most expensive health industry, the most expensive, health structure on Earth, and the worst of all the developed countries. We can't even build a decent fighter jet anymore. We're in war after war after war, and we're now supporting terrorists that attack Christians for being Christians with our money. We now have let the doors wide open to all the terrorist gangs in Guatemala, in Mexico, and so forth. The dollar is collapsing. We've got 80 to 100 million people out of work. You could go on and on and on. And we're headed towards World War III. We keep picking a fight with Russia that doesn't want to fight us. We keep stirring up trouble for Israel's sake, for the global bankers' sake, and they're all demonically driven. Israel should want peace.
Let me give you a Screwtape Letter kind of metaphor. Satan, all the wars are building. The dollar's dropping. Americans are killing Christians with their own money. Babies are dying in their mother's wombs. Everything is going well. The bankers are babysitting everyone and stealing all their assets for the printing money and hosing down the printing presses with water so the printing presses don't explode with fire. Things are wonderful, aren't they? And Satan must say, yes, all is well. It's becoming just as warm up there as it is here in hell.
Well,
our God is God. Now, I want to say this to Tim. Our God is God, and I want to be a little humorous here, but the fact is, this is the end of the lease of the evil empire. The bankers basically are desperate because they know they really can't do anything more. When they had the Bilderberg meeting, and in the next few days they're going to have their meeting at the Bohemian Grove, and they have body parts float down the Russian River.
The satanic owl.
And they have their body parts float down the Russian River. What happens is, this meeting is basically going to cap off the fact they're trying to in a sense, emotionally and sexually and financially and otherwise inculcate themselves with such evil that they can convince themselves that they are so bad that they must be in control. And the fact is, they are not in control. And the fact is, the Most High God is, and godly people, if we had a tiny minority that just stood up and said, we're not going to put up with destroying the dollar. We want all Americans to have the right to health care. We want to have a budget that's balanced, but we don't want to kill Granny. We want to have functional medicine and stop the toxic doctrine getting away with murder. We don't want doctors that are being prostituted, either in occupational medicine or regular medicine, where they're so busy they don't want to tell you to read the product labels or the black box warnings or to stop giving toxic drugs that they know darn well if they read the literature shouldn't be given. No. We want a system where we don't get inculcated, as it says in the original American founders, in foreign entanglements. What are we doing? We've got 700 plus bases all over the world. There's no point in whatsoever in all these wars. We're now supposedly trying to protect our green zone. 500 employees in this giant embassy in Iraq, the biggest embassy outside the United States.
It's a military base, not an embassy.
We're supporting Al Qaeda and Al Nusra and these terrorists when they say they want to kill Americans and Europeans. We're dialoguing and even giving press to the Pope, who's crazy enough to think that you can somehow dialogue with Islam. We're letting Israel go rampant when we should annex a state. And I'm not talking about clawing away their military resources. I want to defang all the Muslim nations around them, which we could do very nicely. We need to actually make a deal with Russia and China, but also stand from a position of strength. I think that Putin has some points.
And how about putting Americans to work in America?
Right, but I think Putin has some points, but I think also we need to have some restraint here. We don't need to see the rise of the Soviet Empire or radicalization of communist totalitarianism. I mean, I don't think what they're doing is necessarily wonderful, but he stands up for so-called Christian values. He stands up for the traditional family. He's standing against homosexuality and drug abuse. And in fact, now we've stopped collaboration with Russia to stop the drug abuse of their young people because we're too busy trying to create a dialectic of war with Russia rather than peace. And that's not Christian. And then we have a Christian president.
It's not even logical because Russia has enough nukes to destroy all life on this planet. Why do we want to pick a war with them?
And then we look at the evidence. And Obama says he's a Christian when he supports Sunni Islam 100%.
He's
no
a
Christian.
Homosexual drug addict, or what?
Right. He's also
maybe he still is. I don't know. Who is he? Who was his mother? Who was his father? Where was he born?
Right. All of his pictures have been photoshopped. We have a Photoshop president. Maybe actually he's a 3D hologram that's constantly projected. Maybe he doesn't exist.
I want to share something. Actually, in church Sunday when I was about to leave and I stopped in front of the Blessed Sacrament and was saying goodbye, I felt a great peace, the peace of God. God is really there, and He's peaceful, He's loving, He's kind, and if you will open your hearts to Him, He's there for you.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. By the way, send ideas on what you want in the newsletter. I sent out one last night. I'm going to be sending out weekly. A lot more media. You'll see lots of new reports up on the live stream channel. Thank you for your support. Thank you for